Twitter users. This follows the filing of a lawsuit at the ECOWAS court by the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, and 176 concerned Nigerians against the federal government over the unlawful suspension of Twitter in Nigeria, criminalization of Nigerians and other people using Twitter. The lawsuit includes the escalating repression of human rights, particularly the right to freedom of expression, access to information, and media freedom in the country. The court, in its order, restricted the government from carrying out such actions against any other social media service provider, as well as media houses. Now, that's the position of the ECOWAS court. But the position of the federal government, their response, of course, tells us that position. The federal government says the suspension of the operations of Twitter in Nigeria is not a right recognized under any treaty enforceable by the ECOWAS court. According to the suit, which was dismissed, the government argued that the court, the ECOWAS court that is, lacks the jurisdiction to determine the criminalization of an act under Nigerian laws. It said Twitter is a microblogging site. It is not an organization of any member state. The right to freedom of expression is completely different from the right of reach. Now, with all this grammar, it needs some explaining, basically of the English and of the legal side. Well, to help with that, Barrister Ritchard Wokocha joins us via phone. Hello, Barrister Wokocha.
Good evening, Sam, and good evening, Nigerians.
Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Okay.
I hope you are too.
Yes, I'm wonderful. So I'm sure you are in tune with, FG versus ECOWAS, who has what and who has the power to do what. But
yes,
straightforward, does the ECOWAS court have the power to criminalize Twitter suspension?
certainly no.
Okay.
It does not. What the court has power to do is to hear matters concerning violation of rights of citizens.
Okay.
Now, there are two aspects to the Twitter hula baloo or the Twitter conflict that deserves being distinguished. With respect to whether or not the court can make declaration concerning suspension of Twitter, I believe that the court does not have jurisdiction to do that.
Okay.
Twitter is not a member of a member state, and it is not even a body known to the law here. It's not a body registered in Nigeria, so as to complain that its right to do business in Nigeria is being adversely affected and in violation of its right as a corporate being. So that's on one hand. But you recall that the Attorney General followed up that announcement with a threat that anybody who is found using Twitter will be penalized, will be prosecuted. Now, that aspect is different. That is a threat to citizens. And so that one is something that is within the jurisdiction of the court.
Okay.
Because citizens of member states have a right under Article 7 of Article 9 of the ECOWAS Treaty, which establishes the court. Member states, citizens from member states have the right to approach the court to make declaration as to whether or not their the member state, that is their country, is violating their human rights. And so, with respect to that one, concerning citizens and arrest and prosecution of citizens for using Twitter, that is roundly within the jurisdiction of the ECOWAS court. And I have no doubt that they will rule in their favor, because, as I have said before, that does not make sense, even within our laws. You cannot prosecute a person for using an application because you don't like the entity that provides the service. So that's a different thing. With respect to that, the court has jurisdiction. But certainly not with respect to declaring whether or not the federal government of Nigeria, a sovereign entity, had powers to suspend the operation of a microblogging website or a microblogging entity
service
that is not registered in the state.
Okay. Now, the biggest right that we're, asking questions as to whether or not it's been infringed upon is the right to freedom of expression. if we're looking at that, the right to freedom of expression, is the platform of expression considered when we consider whether or not that right has been infringed upon?
Yes, it's important to say that that aspect will be problematic for the claimants, like those who have gone to court, because your right to expression is also answerable to a number of other rules. Expression must be a legitimate expression by legitimate mode. So if by any reason or by any means for any reason your state delegitimizes the operation of a particular mode of expression, I doubt that you can argue that you have a fundamental right that you must be able to use that platform that in your state has been delegitimized or declared suspended or not admissible. You can't deal with a person that is persona non grata in your state.
Now, Barrister Wokocha, people do not agree with the reason Nigeria is giving, for banning Twitter, if you may. I'd like to quote Mr. Lai Mohammed. It says, "The persistent use of the platform for activities capable of undermining Nigeria's corporate existence is the reason for the ban." So, speaking about illegitimize, which, well, that's what it is. If the citizens do not agree with the reason you're giving to ban it in the first place, how do we reconcile that with whether or not using that platform to express yourself is breaking any law or infringing any right?
The citizens agree must be pretending to be Twitter. You cannot do what Twitter should do. You cannot, in exercise of your right, take on a right or a capacity, a legal right or function of another, no matter how angry you are that they have been unfair to him. It is Twitter that will question whether or not their ban is legitimate. But a citizen who is a Twitter user, Twitter. So I think they are going beyond what is within their own competence and taking on what should be the business of Twitter.
Twitter is subscribable.
That's on one hand anyway.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Nigeria is a sovereign state. Nigeria has laws governing its airways.
Truly.
You may like them, you may not like them. The Communications Act, Nigerian Communications Act, it's an extant law, a valid law that regulates use of our airwaves and broadcasting. Mind you, the entity we are talking about is unknown to Nigerian law. So if the regulation authority takes an action that is consistent with the law that authorizes them to regulate, how do you say you are not satisfied with the reason that is given? A nation can take that step for national security. It can even take it for national pride. You cannot question the fact that you are not satisfied with the extent to which you think they feel they have been hurt and all that. But the reasons that have been given, it may be called quote and unquote freedom of expression. But if you are promotion of freedom of expression in a country in which you are not an existing person because you are not incorporated in Nigeria, if it has been for purposes of, take it from the perspective of the complainant now, for purposes of whipping up sentiment, encouraging and funding or supporting riots and all that, your activity in that state, vis-a-vis you and the government of that state, is certainly subversive.
Okay.
And then if you move it forward to the present situation, what we have in Nigeria is no longer just expression of right. Citizens are getting killed. Public facilities are getting destroyed. And if your activity in any way supports or aids or provides platform for preaching of the doctrine that is keeping that ongoing crime going, then you are certainly doing something that is contrary to the law of that country, something that is clearly subversive. And I doubt that anybody can argue that that country does not have the right to stop you from continuing to promote those activities.
Yeah, well, my position is from the average Nigerian, not from Twitter. I mean, like, I can't speak for the company in any way. They would have their ways of handling. But the point I was trying to make is, now, the service is subscriber-based. Let me give this example, Barrister Wokocha. Let's say there's a woman who supplies moi moi to a neighborhood or everybody in a particular community.
Yes.
Now, if for any reason, right or wrong, we're not looking at the reason, the government shuts down the business activity of that moi moi seller, because she's the only one that supplies moi moi, the citizens will feel it's an attack on them, not on the woman, because their supply of moi moi has been affected. So,
well, can we consider that a human right or a fundamental right? A right without which you can't live. Can we determine that your life and existence is threatened because without that woman's mind, you will die?
Well,
is there any way we can translate your interest in the woman's business to a fundamental right that is protected under Chapter 4 of the Nigerian Constitution?
From this position,
or related documents.
Yeah, from this position, I can't, Barrister Wokocha, but there might be somebody who will be able to draw the. I don't know. Somebody might come up and say, yes, because I didn't get the moi moi, this one happened and I couldn't do this and my right has been, there are people who would intellectually draw that and they might have a point.
It will be interesting to see how the court reaches that position with that argument. The fact that something is useful for you does not necessarily make it a human right.
Okay.
The fact that you use Twitter does not make the use of Twitter a human right, such that anybody who is prevented from using Twitter has had his human right violated. I don't think it can be equated with what the law describes as human rights. The use of a particular platform does not transform to a human right.
Okay. Now, I'd like to quote what the FG was saying in response to the ECOWAS drama. The right to freedom of expression is completely different from the freedom of reach. Does that legally mean something different from the English language?
It does. The two are not exactly the same. I guess you're asking whether that makes sense. Yes, it makes some sense. Preventing you from expressing yourself is clearly doing you harm and preventing you from exercising your rights.
Okay.
But preventing you from expressing yourself in a particular way or by a particular platform will not translate to exactly the same thing. I think that's the point they are trying to distinguish by talking of freedom of expression and freedom of speech.
Okay.
And again, as I said earlier, you are free to express yourself by all legal means, and if by any means the justice system or the criminal system of your country criminalizes a particular platform or a particular instrument of expression, I doubt that you can argue that the government's action, unless you establish that it's not in consonance with the law of the land, I doubt that you can establish by the fact that because it's one of your instruments of expression that it constitutes a violation, an illegality on the part of the government and a violation of your rights.
All right. Now, conversations with Barrister Ritchard Wokocha, we're talking about ECOWAS, whether or not they have the jurisdiction to criminalize Twitter suspension. The FG says they do not. Now, I would like to hear from you. If you have any questions for Barrister Wokocha, please call 0817-923-0002. 0817-923-0003. 0817-923-0007. And 0817-923-0009. At 5:30, we'll be taking the headlines. There's a question here on WhatsApp. It says, please ask the lawyer to tell us the difference between ban and suspend, because FG insists that they didn't ban Twitter, but they suspended it.
Ban is to completely outlaw something and cause that thing not to exist. Suspend has the effect of temporarily achieving the same thing. It temporarily stops that thing from being utilized within the period of the suspension. But suspension leaves you with the understanding that it's a temporary thing and that it can be released or will be released in front. It means it's not a conclusive closure. It's a temporary closure.
All right. Well, the headlines have to happen now. Barrister Wokocha, after the news, you tell us what you believe would be a rational conclusion to this matter. Don't go anywhere.
A clean surrounding is a collective effort.
Diseases could be avoided
with good hygiene practice. Be more responsible with how you dispose waste products. The environment will be better looking without litter and exposed garbage. We love our city clean. This message is from 92.3 Nigeria Info.
Headline News, Nigeria Info on
92.3.
Headline News.
Good evening. I am Constance Mega with the news. Governor Wike denies borrowing to carry out projects. Wife of Inspector General of Police Hajara Usman Al-Khali Baba says recent attacks on police personnel left several families in poverty. INEC to begin online voter registration on Monday. Police arrest Unilag student over murder of Super TV CEO. Courts grants Nollywood actor Baba Ijesha bail. President Buhari to travel to London tomorrow for medical follow-up. On the foreign scene, rescue operation underway in Florida as 12-story building partially collapsed. In business, hike in price of aviation fuel despite increasing global price of crude oil. In entertainment, actress Mercy Aigbe begs estranged husband to sign their divorce paper. In sports, UEFA to scrap away goals rule for all club competitions from next season in favor of extra time penalty shootouts. Well, those are the headlines. More news comes your way at 6. Contact our newsroom on 0818-900-0017. Thank you for listening.
Welcome back. It's still Hard Facts in 92.3 Nigeria Info. My name is Sam Oråcle Chinedu. The federal government says the suspension of the operations of Twitter in Nigeria is not a right recognized under any treaty enforceable by the ECOWAS court. According to the suit, which was dismissed, the government argued that the court lacks the jurisdiction to determine the criminalization of an act under Nigerian laws. I have Barrister Ritchard and Wokocha back on the phone. You're welcome once again, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
All right, we have a few minutes left. If you have any questions connected to the conversation, please call 0817-923-0002. 0817-923-0003. 0817-923-0007. Of course, WhatsApp and Telegram. 080-903-06-416. There is a comment here from Prince from Port Hackett. People making a living using Twitter. Suspending the app, isn't that an act of infringing on their human rights? Prince is asking. Well, Prince, lots of people make money through illegal means as well. So, I mean, making money is just not enough. But we have Reginald on the phone. Hello, Reginald.
Yes.
Good evening.
Thank you very much. My question, first of all, let me appreciate the wisdom of the learned barrister Wokocha. Then my question now is that can the citizen of any country or any nation still use a platform that the government, the federal government has already banned? Can they still have do they have the right to use it? If no, what their action? Is it not a violation of the government? Which I know that government has the right for any punishment against any of its citizens, the violation of the authority of the government.
Okay, hold
That's
on.
my question.
Reginald, hold on. Barrister Wokocha, did you get the question?
I get the question.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, sir.
Part of the right is that Section 39 of our Constitution, which is the plank of the agitation or the argument of those who are in court. Part of the right that it guarantees is the right to receive and to disseminate information, to establish and operate any medium for dissemination of information, ideas, and opinions. It includes the right to import. So you can get information prior to World Wide Web becoming pervasively used in Nigeria. A few people had access to it, and they were entitled to it. So I believe that the use of Twitter, which has been banned in Nigeria, will not by itself constitute an offense. For it to constitute an offense, you have to link it with the provision of the law. And the provision that the government has been talking about is the provision on sedition. Now, that cannot stand because sedition is required to be a publication that is promoting hatred or insurrection within Nigeria.
Yeah.
So the mere use of Twitter, the name Twitter, does not incite Nigerians against their state or against their government. So the mere use of Twitter will not be subversive. What will be subversive is speculating subversive information published by Twitter. So if there is something published by somebody that will generate crisis in Nigeria and that will promote the acrimony in Nigeria, and you speculate it, the act of speculating that inciting statement can be linked with sedition. But the mere use of Twitter for purposes other than these negative purposes will not constitute an offense. That's why I said I feel certain that the plan will succeed on that part of their claim. But Section 39 says you have this right, provided that no person other than the government shall regulate, I'm abridging, shall regulate or establish any wireless broadcasting, and being specific to what concerns Twitter, without authorization of the government. So that's strictly subject to authorization by the President, the government of Nigeria, or an act of the National Assembly. And it went further to say that nothing in the section granting you that right shall invalidate any law that is reasonably justifiable in a democratic society for the purpose of, among others, regulating wireless broadcasting. So if you look at or imposing restrictions upon persons holding offices and all that dealing in that area. So if you look at even the right we are talking about that is granted by the Constitution, the highest law of the land, it tells you clearly that this right is subject to regulation of the airwaves by government, the powers of the government as a sovereign entity to regulate its airwaves. As every nation does for its airwaves, its flight space, and its seas, its waters that are within this national territory. So you know from the beginning that that right is subject to being affected by those sovereign actions of the state.
Yeah.
And secondly, the government's power to regulate airwaves and wireless broadcasting naturally covers this area.
Okay.
So the National Broadcasting Act that empowers them to take the steps that they have taken. It's clearly within the description of the rights that are available to you under Section 39. Before we even talk of Section 45 that creates further power for the state to make laws that can regulate and affect certain rights, including the right to freedom of information.
Okay.
I mean, the right to expression.
Now, Sam Wokocha, quickly, because we're out of time, what would you consider as a rational conclusion to this matter in the interest of justice, in your opinion?
I think that what citizens can do, because citizens cannot get into the argument between the sovereign state of Nigeria and a non-entity, I mean a non-Nigerian entity, like Twitter, a microblogging outfit. They cannot go into that. That is a waste of time. What they can do is to appeal to their government to take it easy and appeal to Twitter, which they use and whom they pay money to, to take the steps that are required to be taken under the law to be able to operate in Nigeria. I think that is the way out. Any other argument, the way we are going about it is sentimental and it will not fail with the law. It will not stand with the law.
Well, thank you very much, Barr Sam Wokocha, for your time. We appreciate it. Have a lovely day, sir.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
Okay. Well, there you have it. We are bound by the law. We must obey. Well, the program has to happen now. 5 o'clock, I beg your pardon, 6 o'clock brings some major news. After that, we have open season. Don't go anywhere.